Welcome back to These Things Are Written on this Friday. The reading for today is not a Good Friday reading. It seems more like a Monday one, right? One that you don't really want to read, but we do because it's in the Bible. Now remember, every part of God's Word is there for a reason. And when we read through these genealogies, while we might think that they are boring and not important, they are there for a purpose. One of those purposes is to show that this is a real person. These aren't simply stories that were made up, but these are the generations that it moves from one to another. Let's begin. Genesis 5, verses 1 through 5. This is the book of the generations of Adam. When God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. Male and female, he created them, and he blessed them and named them man when they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness, after his image, and named him Seth. The days of Adam after he fathered Seth were 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days that Adam lived were 930, and he died. Now, as we look at this in the book of Genesis, it begins different sections with a phrase, something like, this is the book of the generations, or these are the generations of. We saw this actually in chapter 2, verse 4. If you read that part, it talks about these are the generations of the heaven and earth. Really, you could say that this is talking about, this is the story about the heavens and the earth, or something like that. But it's going through showing the timeline. And as we get to this one, it shows the descendants from Adam, then as it will end with Noah. It's the transition from one story, the story of Adam and creation and his sons, to the story of Noah that would pick up next, the next major section in the book. There are other places where it talks about these generations other than 2, 4, and 5, 1. Chapter 10 talks about the generations of Noah. Then 11 is Shem and Terah. There are others in there as well. Again, pointing out the authenticity of this story, pointing out that these were real people with real descendants going back. Now, one of the questions that I'm guessing you were thinking in your mind was this. 930 years? Really? He was really that old? How? Well, yes, he was that old. How is this possible? Well, remember that this is before the flood. And as you read and get some idea about the flood, you see that it really changed the whole atmosphere of the earth. It didn't rain before, but after that, when the flood happened, the floodgates were opened up from the deep. It seems like a cataclysmic event that changed how the world and its atmosphere was set. So once that protective covering over the world was gone, this is one theory, then the sun and its radiation began to cause more damage to people. That could be a big reason, a big cause for it. It could be that, for example, the oxygen content had changed drastically, or something else that made mankind not to be able to live as long as they had in the past. That's one of the theories. There are others as well. Again, if you have questions about that, Answers in Genesis is a great resource to use and to go back and look at that. I'm going to continue now with verse 21 is where I'll start. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he fathered Methuselah. Enoch walked with God after he fathered Methuselah 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. See, Enoch was one of the few people in the Bible, possibly Moses as another, but other than and Elijah, but other than that, Enoch did not die. He simply was taken away to the Lord. He was a man full of faith, and God rewarded him in that amazing way. That is really all we know about Enoch, is just what it says here. It's kind of interesting. Then when Methuselah had lived 187 years, he fathered Lamech. Methuselah lived after he fathered Lamech, 782 years. And he had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Methuselah was 969 years, and he died. The longest age recorded in the Bible. When Lamech had lived 182 years, he fathered a son and called his name Noah, saying, out of the ground of the Lord that the Lord has cursed, this one shall bring us relief from our work and from painful toil of our hands, looking forward to the hope we might have there. So as we look at this, we saw it move, and I skipped over some of the generations, but the generations moving from Adam all the way to Noah, preparing for the next story that will hit in chapter 6. One more thing that I want to point out as it relates to Noah. His grandfather Methuselah was 969 years when he died. When you kind of do the math and set it up, you see that Methuselah most likely died in the flood. He was one of the wicked men that God sent to be punished through the waters of the flood. It's a sad statement of really life and how evil that it had become. We'll get more into that when we start looking at the story of Noah in Genesis chapter 6 on Monday. I hope to see you then. God bless.